JJ McCarthy held out of practice, knee soreness. Everybody panic!
You are Locked On Vikings, your daily Minnesota Vikings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast, where we're always trying to learn something new. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And thank you very, very much for making Locked On Vikings your first listen of the day each and every day. I appreciate you all so very much. My hashtag every day is if you're new here, you can find this show anywhere you find your favorite podcasts, whether it is SiriusXM, where you can hear live broadcasts of games, or even YouTube, or Amazon Fire and Roku. Just download the Locked On Minnesota Sports app, or just search out Locked On Vikings wherever it is you listen to your favorite shows. Today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. It's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Today, it is Twitter Tuesday. That means I'm answering your questions, and I have a ton to get to. So if you have questions for me, you can always send them to me at lockedonvikingspodcast@gmail.com. Just shoot me an email or fill out the Google form in the show notes, or you can just send them to me on Twitter. I usually put a call out on Mondays. First question that I'm going to answer comes from Jerry McCloyne, who asks, with the potential injury to JJ, do you anticipate the Vikings looking for available free agent QBs or a possible trade scenario? Whoa, chill. So, okay, if you missed this, JJ McCarthy did not participate in Monday night's night practice, the sort of makeup, rained out night practice. They were going to have a night practice. It rained that day, or it stormed that day, so they moved practice inside. They canceled the whole event and did sort of a makeup session after the preseason game. It was in shells because they just had a game. They're going to joint practices. So it kind of was like whatever. And JJ McCarthy didn't participate. Neither did Dallas Turner. Kevin O'Connell said on the podium about McCarthy, he had a little bit of knee soreness and they're trying to be smart about it. And he said it was routine. He said that it's normal for, guys after their first preseason game to have a little bit of knee soreness. We want to be really smart about it. I don't know if that also applies to Dallas Turner or not, or what the deal was with him. He was in street clothes just watching, so I don't know what the deal is with him, or if those guys are going to participate in joint practices or not. But O'Connell was talking about we hope we have him for the Cleveland game. I don't know. I know knee soreness is going to make everybody flip out. What? Don't give us that detail. Just be like, hey, he's a little sore after the game. We're doing some rest. Chill. It's now everybody's freaking out. But here's the deal with this kind of thing. I know we're all super burned by the tweak thing, which, by the way, happened 5 years ago now. So if you still haven't gotten over that, maybe it's time to think about it. But so I get that when a coach comes to the podium and is like, hey, this is an injury, it exists, but it's not serious. Our first instinct is to be like, oh my God, it's a serious injury. Oh my God, it's a serious injury. He wouldn't say it's not serious if it weren't serious. But it's what it's like. We kind of just have to take his word at face value and say, okay, he's going to be a maybe for Cleveland, maybe probably not for the joint practices. I would guess if we're holding them out of the shells sort of half speed stuff that they did at the night practice. The joint practices are a lot more physical. So but it feels like a day-to-day thing, not a week-to-week or a month-to-month. It's certainly not a let's go find free agents thing. Whoa, that would be, I think, a strong overreaction, unless they are just lying to us and his ACL is torn in 3 different places and he'll never play football again, which, of course that's the truth because it has to be. Jorge Dominguez, we got a bunch of JJ McCarthy questions. Jorge Dominguez asks, while there is a lot of JJ hype, which is earned, what would you like to see McCarthy build upon in the first preseason game? I think it's the mistakes. The consistent things are the same things we've been talking about, right? The rotation, there was one that JT O'Sullivan pointed out that I've pointed out in the past in OTAs and stuff, where when he hitches, to move across the field. So if he reads the front side of a play and his feet are aligned to that side of the play, and then he uses a hitch or two to get over to the other side of the play, he doesn't rotate enough on that. He needs to hitch more dramatically. It's just a commitment thing, and something that will come with practice, but that's something to work on. That has been a fairly consistent, very small detail, but it will have an effect. And then, just some of the, and then just tightening things up, right? And just being a little bit quicker on the read, being just a scotch tighter about everything. It's still a little bit loose, and things were coming out a little later than you want them to. Not so much that it caused those things to be incomplete, but so much that it might cause incompletions against tighter actual regular season defense versus the sort of vanilla halfway preseason stuff that you'll get. So that's a couple of things. Plus, hey, don't throw the bad interception. Just don't do that anymore. I mean, that's easy note, not really much like you practice there. You just say, don't do that again. Nate Walton says, if O'Connell doesn't think JJ's ready to take the starter role, how does QB development work if all the coaching staff attention is put on preparing for next week's game? Does JJ get any reps with the ones, or is he on scout team, or does he just shadow box in the background? So my understanding of a backup QB's job is it becomes a lot about helping the starter prepare. So likely what JJ McCarthy will do is he'll be in the QB rooms, right? He'll be in the meeting rooms. He'll be preparing the game plans. And in doing so, he'll become that much more familiar with game plans and all that stuff. I don't think like 2s and 3s get a lot of practice reps in like week to week. I wonder if, you would like when that's happening, you would have some time with McCarthy maybe off to the side with a QB assistant or just with Josh McCown. Maybe you just say, hey, there's like a staff member. It's like, hey, keep working with JJ while we go, prepare for the Giants. So you can probably do something, although playing scout team against defense probably wouldn't be the worst thing for him either. Just to kind of get those extra reps out and stuff. So you can find ways to work it in. If you are so inclined. I think at quarterback, it's kind of worth warping your stuff to do that. At other positions, it's a little bit like, yeah, maybe you'll play a little scout team, but probably you're just going to sort of like be on ice. There's not a lot of room for like depth chart motion elsewhere on the roster, really only with quarterback because it gets so much attention. Jack asks, are you impressed at all by how quick of a study McCarthy seems to be? Kid is consistently getting better mechanically and seems to have a great command of the playbook and huddle already. Yeah, absolutely. Both in the way of like, for a rookie, his understanding of things is ahead of where you would need it to be. It needs to tighten up, like I said, but first preseason game, right? We're ahead of benchmarks. But also like, yeah, it's insane how much memorization these guys do. Just like from a human, from me as a layman, just like admiring what NFL quarterbacks have to do. It's very impressive. Nolan M asks, what exactly is the Dean Lowry role? What are some qualities that coaches look for in a 3-4 DE? Is it anything like 3T? Yeah, so it's functionally going to be the same as 3-tech. You want somebody bigger who can take on some double teams, but also be a force in the pass rush beyond just pushing the pocket. What I've been calling the Dean Lowry memorial role is the rotational guy. So it's kind of your third DT. This is your Jerry Tillery right now, where Harrison Phillips and Jonathan Bullard will be on the field next to each other in 4 fronts, and then in 5 fronts, Harrison Phillips is in the middle at a 0-tech, and then Bullard and another guy come in and kind of play your sort of B-gap rusher, whether that's at 3-tech or a 4-eye or whatever. And sort of you can't just be a run specialist in that one. You have to be a little bit helpful in the pass rush too, and be able to like take advantage of a two-way go. If everybody's chipping the edges super hard or something like that, but they're leaving you one-on-one and you can go to both gaps, you have to be able to like punish that. That's, I think, the job of the Dean Lowry role. So you want a little bit more quickness, but not so much quickness that like Hercules Mataafa was a bridge too far here. Putting that at like D tackle. He did okay for, a guy that like made the team for a couple of years, but like that is all quickness, no size. Like you need a little bit of beef. You need to still be able to like hang on. If you get washed out, that run play is going to work, FU Buddy asks, do you think we add help in the secondary before week 1? So 1 million people asked about Stephon Gilmore because I put this call out before his visit happened, so we didn't know it was going to happen. So to circle back to it, Stephon Gilmore visited the Vikings on Monday. He left without a deal. He said, O'Connell said, yep, we had a productive conversation. We're all really happy. We'll see if we need him. So to me, that says he's in the Rolodex part of the roster where you're not actually on the roster, but your phone number is saved in case we need you. So it doesn't sound like that's the guy that like they're bringing him in to like go push a starter or anything like that. I think it's going to be Byron Murphy, Shaq Griffin, Caleb Evans, Fabian Murrah. I think there's your corners. I don't think other secondary help will come unless guys like continue to get injured. Michael Thau asks, depth is always great, but is Tristan Jackson the developmental wide receiver we end up trading, and Naylor is the one we keep as wide receiver 3-4? Naylor as wide receiver 3 feels pretty locked up to me. We'll see. Brandon Powell could still, go have a great game and make a case or whatever, but Naylor is certainly got a strong grasp on that wide out 3 job. Powell's probably 4, and then Tristan Jackson would be your 5 then. So that's on the roster. But here's the thing. The guys who get traded in camp are not the guys who play well in camp. This is just a general rule of camp. I get the it's a very like fantasy team oriented thing. Oh, I've got 4 good wide receivers and I need a running back. Let's find somebody who needs it, right? But when you got a guy playing good in camp, you want to keep that guy in the building. And when you have a guy that's maybe got some potential but isn't living up to it, this is why everybody's saying like, what about trade Lewis Seen? Hey, there's some potential. He's not living up to it. Does somebody want to take a shot at that? You trade that guy. Not the guy who actually is showing you something. That's somebody that like what you get in return probably isn't going to be better than what you've seen with your 2 eyes, because the guys trading for him are still seeing him as something of an unknown. Oh my God, I have so many more questions. So we're going to have to try to rapid fire through some of these to get there, but we'll do it. We'll get through it together. Coming up next on Locked On Vikings. Today's episode of Locked On Vikings is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. That's the formula for winning championships, but it's also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Whether it's something like a supercharger or a roof rack or an LED headlight or something under the hood that you just need to keep that thing running and getting your family from point A to point B, eBay Motors has what it is that you need. And with the eBay Guaranteed Fit, that part will fit your ride the first time or your money back. So whatever your make, your model, they will figure out and make sure you get the proper part that is compatible for your car. That is the eBay Guaranteed Fit. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Moving on with this Twitter Tuesday episode of the Locked On Vikings podcast. When you're done here, if you're still hankering for football knowledge, go to Locked On Fantasy Football. At Locked On Fantasy Football, Vinny Iyer will get you hooked up for everything you need for your upcoming fantasy draft so you can just dunk on everybody at your office or school or wherever it is, your family, whoever it is that you are competing against. You can absolutely smash them mercilessly. Let Vinny Iyer guide you there. Next question I'm going to answer comes from Casey the Coolest, who asks, was our secondary getting cooked because our front 7 were running a vanilla defense, or was it just a bad showing / they are terrible? So this is the kind of question that you'll have to answer on a play-by-play basis. I think on the whole, there are enough valid excuses for us to not go panicking about like Byron Murphy, right? A lot of people like, is Byron Murphy bad now? I think there's like the fact, no blitzes, vanilla coverage, more single coverage and on an island than you'll ever see, to the point where actually on watching it, I wouldn't be surprised to learn that Brian Flores left them in single coverage just to get them tough reps, just like as a practice thing, and not necessarily as an evaluative thing, especially with the starters and people that are like definitely making the roster. I think about that Jay Ward play, the fade that went over Jay Ward. You're like leaving him one-on-one on the backside of Robert, on the robber side of cover 1 Robert. So if you didn't listen yesterday, cover 1 Robber, you start with 2 safeties, one goes high and one goes low, and they kind of cross each other in the middle, and the low one is not going to help. So that if you're on the side of the safety that's going to go low, you have that entire, you have man everywhere he goes, right? And you don't have any help over the top. So you have to usually play that very off coverage, very safe. And in a real game situation, that would be very, maybe you'd still give up a catch, but it'd just be a catch. It wouldn't be, a 30-yard something crazy thing. And while Flores worked in some stunts and worked in a blitz here or there, some of his base concepts, like it was still very like, we just went into cover 3. That's never going to happen. That's never going to happen in a preseason game. So I think that like Flores' defense in particular is going to have a bigger drop off from its real version to its vanilla version versus something like the Fangio style defenses that do just kind of drop into a base zone quite a lot from different looks and stuff, but they drop into a base zone quite a lot. And so it does kind of look, part of their issue too is that, post snap, it does start to look a little bit vanilla. And so, you can kind of expect that what you get in the preseason is closer. But with Flores's, it's like, man, there are so many secrets that are going to like help here. And, Byron Murphy in single coverage on a 10-yard hitch is just not going to be that much of a problem, because if he's in that isolated of man coverage, there is some unholy blitz thing happening, and that route won't have the time it had in the preseason, So I think he made it hard on the secondary, and I wouldn't be surprised to learn that it was on purpose to to sharpen him up. Sandra Ludwig asks, why does our weak performance in the red zone never seem to go away? 2nd and 3 from the 5 and nothing. This is another one, like, it's never the same thing every time, right? It's never even the same thing every play. They had a run play that didn't work. They had a play on stick that actually worked. Things compress a lot in the red zone. The red zone requires you to be a little bit more precise in your timing. Darnold missed one, and then the 4th down was just a really good play against the Raiders, or a really good play by the Raiders. The corner that was on Jalen Naylor. Naylor had a little bit of space. The ball was well placed. The corner just made a really good reaching pass breakup. It was just an awesome play, and it's like you kind of just got to take that. There's 3 plays with 3 completely different reasons. There's not going to be like a universal pattern here, or like one cancer you can cut out that makes the problem go away. Sloth asks, it worked versus the Raiders, but in general, what do you think about the punt and pin versus going for it on 4th and medium? I believe you're talking about like at the end of the game. So this is going to be a very situational thing for me. And one of the, like, there's like a bunch of matrix. There's like the Ben Baldwin bot, and I think the New York Times has a like go for it or not bot that tells you, 4th and 4 from the 50 versus 4th and 5 from the 30. Like, what's the analyticsy thing to do? And I think that's a reasonable guideline to start from. And then from there, if you want to defy the bots, have a reason. That's kind of where I'm like, if you want to defy the bots, have a reason. Say, I know we're not really supposed to punt on 4th and 2 here, but we're getting killed up front. They've got, we're going up against the Lions, and they got DJ Reader who's humming really hard right now, and I don't really think we can get there on a sneak, so we're going to punt this. Like, okay, that's a reason. That's where I feel about it in general. And I think when it gets to like situational, I think I am very partial to 4th and short, go for it if it wins the game on the spot. There's a minute left, they're out of timeouts. If we get if you go for it and get it, you're kneeling. I'm pretty partial to that, because failure doesn't even necessarily lead to losing. You still have a shot to win the game by getting a stop there, but success immediately means win. I think that's just going to be a positive win probability proposition when that's the case. When we can go for it on 4th down, and then we got to get one more 1st down, and they got a couple timeouts. We still got to keep going, but if we go for it, maybe that's a little bit of a harder sell for me. Just like put them on the 2 and, the best you can, and see if your defense can come up with something for you. Then I get a little bit more sympathetic to that. OMG, they killed Kenny. Fantastic. Says, after that disaster class of pass blocking reps, are we ready to write off Kene as having the potential to be an RB in any capacity? Write off is such a hard thing for me. Like, go have a better game, and then I stop caring about this one. Like go show that you got it, that you got more physical. Go pancake a linebacker, a blitzing linebacker next game. It doesn't matter. He's making the team on special teams. I still think he's the starting. He's listed at least as the starting kick returner, and he didn't play as the starting kick returner, which kind of tells me that that's not a battle for that job. In the same way, Justin Jefferson didn't play because he's not in a battle for his job. So he's in a battle for running back work. So he played there, but he didn't do any of the kick return stuff. So it's kind of a moot point. But yeah, I do not. But to your point, if you don't show me better pass protection and you still have opportunities to do that, then yeah, I don't trust you on the field, and you're just a special teamer, and that's okay. There's always a handful of players on the field that are very deep, too deep on the depth chart to get play from scrimmage, and they're only going to get in on special teams. There's a lot of places for that. Run Game Enjoyer asks, it wasn't a big sample, but what did you see out of the run game with the starters? It's obviously preseason vanilla stuff, but were there any hints that they might be moving from a zone scheme? So definitely no hints at anything in particular, which feels very by design. We saw some zone, some duo, some gap. Like, we saw a little bit of everything. And that definitely feels like something that is intended to throw a team off the scent. If I am scouting the Vikings based off of that, what they ran with the starters, I have no idea what their run game is going to be. And I think I'm not supposed to have any idea what their run game is supposed to be. But there's versatility to it, and I love when there's versatility to it. The Lions do a great job of that. I think that's part of why their run game is so successful. So I like that they showed out like a lot of different concepts. Speaking of, David Rose asks, Ed Ingram, Question mark. You just want to know how Ed Ingram did. I talked about it yesterday, so you can go listen to that. But basically, up and down day, gave up that pressure. I think had one other play I didn't love, but when he went in with the twos, he just dominated. It was just so very clear that guy did not belong on anyone's second team. He just started killing as soon as it wasn't Christian Wilkins across from him. Absolutely smoked some guys. So I think kind of as you'd expect, right? A couple of mistakes versus a total superstar, but once you get into versus a scrub competition, you show that you're a starting NFL guard. Ryan asks, what's up with Reisner? Didn't play at all in the last game. He's hurt. He missed a practice or two before the game against the Raiders. So we'll see if we see him now in the rest of the preseason. A lot of times when a guy gets hurt, like they could come back, but it's like, whatever, it's preseason and we know we're going to roster you. So they just hold him out the whole preseason anyways. So what should be a 3-day injury turns into a 3-week injury. And it's like, whatever, like we're just going to be like super safe with you. You know the scheme. I've got a lot more questions. So if I don't get to yours, I apologize, but I'm going to get to as many as I can coming up. Today's episode of Locked On Vikings is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn is not just a job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals that you can't find anywhere else, even professionals who are not actively searching for a job. 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you post on LinkedIn, you might be catching the eye of somebody that wouldn't have even known that your opportunity is perfect for them. 2.5 million small businesses use LinkedIn for hiring, and 86% of those small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. So hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. LinkedIn understands that you're probably focusing on a lot of things, and hiring is just one of them, whether you're a small business owner or whether you're an HR person at a bigger firm. You probably have a lot of stuff going on, and you don't have a bunch of time to sit there and write perfect blurbs. They've got an AI tool that helps with that. Or, sift through 40 million resumes. They've got tools that can help you pare it down to people that fit you and your company's unique needs. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Moving on with this Twitter Tuesday episode of the Locked On Vikings podcast. The next question comes from Anti-Gravity, who says, what would the Vikings have to throw in to get someone to take Scene's contract off of our hands? Are we getting Jared Goff taxed? Yeah, because getting rid of Jared Goff was like a throw-in with the Matt Stafford thing. Hey, I guess that you have to kind of admit that worked out okay for the Lions. Worked out better for the Rams because they got a ring and Lions don't have one yet, but at least the Lions have a guy that they're happy with. I don't think you have to like Osweiler this, because it's not a huge contract. The team trading for him is taking like 1.3 mil. Like it's pretty small potatoes. I think it's like Jesse Davis cost I think it was the Steelers more. Jesse Davis cost the Steelers more when the Vikings traded him after he functionally didn't make the team despite having some guaranteed money and had to be traded away. It was a 6-7 swap. It was nothing, but the Vikings did technically come away with more draft capital than they started with, and then they got money off the books. So it probably would be something like that. That said, I thought that what he did in the Raiders preseason game was a small step, maybe too little too late, but a step toward making the roster and not away from making the roster. So at least it was a positive. Might not be enough of one, but I did think that his game was like fine and that he showed an ability to like do his job and park himself where he was supposed to be. Chris asks, does CJ Ham have competition? Who fills his role if he goes out for any reason? No, CJ Ham has no competition this year. They have had some backup Jake Bargas fullbacks, Kari Blassingham, who's I think on the Titans now. Oh no, he's on the Bears. Of course, how could I forget? He was like CJ Ham competition a couple years ago, but not right now. And then what happens if he goes out is two things. Either the Vikings just use a lot more 12 personnel and just replace their 21 personnel packages with like 12 personnel, and they just say, this is how we're going to be heavy. Or you just have like Johnny Munt do it, which would functionally kind of turn into a lot of the same concepts because the tight ends in the backfield a lot anyways. Cole Reese asks, preseason hype bias aside, I assume you meant Bo Richter over Gabe Murphy. Yeah, right? Like that is absolutely the case right now. Gabe Murphy did not play in the preseason game, and Bo Richter did, and he played well. So Bo Richter has laid down more of a foundation for why he should make the team than Gabe Murphy. Gabe Murphy got like more undrafted money, but like that's hundreds of thousands of dollars. That's nothing to an NFL team. That is like not even veteran minimums, right? So that like making that decision shouldn't be dictated by money and never really is dictated by money. The only thing is if you feel as though Gabe Murphy would like get poached by somebody and then maybe you stash him on the roster Andre Carter style, but I kind of hate that move. And I think it was actually a waste of a roster spot last year because Andre Carter is getting blown out by everybody else and looks like very much a long shot to make the team. But yeah, Bo Richter had a good game. Gabe Murphy had a no game. So it's 1-0. The Fall of Hall asks, any way you slice it, it seemed like another poor showing from Jaren Hall. I wouldn't say his receivers did him any favors, but he looked visibly uncomfortable and appeared to misread a few routes along the way. At this point, do we even keep him on the practice squad or do we look for another Devy QB instead? So I think if you cut Jaren Hall, I don't think you look like 3 quarterbacks is the normal amount of quarterbacks to have in your building. Having a fourth random Devy quarterback, I suppose you could bring in some, like total cast off, hilarious name you remember from a 3 interception contest he had in college kind of guy. I suppose, but like that guy's not going to get a lot of coaching. That guy's not going to get a lot of there's not a lot of reason to have that guy, especially if your scout team reps are going to go to JJ McCarthy because you're trying to develop him like we talked about earlier. I don't really see the reason to have a fourth guy. So if you're going to cut Jaren Hall, I think you just roll with the 3 and then that's that. And if Sam Darnold gets hurt and you don't want to put in McCarthy, you still have Mullins for that. But here's what I'll say about Jaren Hall's game. He had he had those batted passes, which it's so tough because typically the conventional wisdom on a batted pass is that it's not the QB's fault. That's the O-line's fault. The O-line let the defender get too close, and then the guy got his hands up. Now, if you're not trying to get to throwing windows, or if your timing is wrong, like the plays are designed such that there should be a lane to throw it through. But if your timing is off and now you're throwing it directly over a guy and he can get his hands up, you're exposing yourself to that. And I think when it happens over and over and over again, that's probably it. We had a very similar discussion with Kirk Cousins when a lot of his passes got batted, and it was like a big long streak of them. And then it kind of stopped happening, which tells you that is kind of how random stuff works out, is that randomness is streaky, famously, like the famous coin flip experiment thing. But which is flip a coin 50 times and see how often it goes heads, tails, heads, tails. You're going to see streaks. But after a couple of drives, he settled down a little bit. He got, they started calling easy stuff. This is going to sound like a really big insult. That last drive, to set up the game-winning field goal felt a lot like the Bo Nix drives, where it was just like, let's just give him, the classics. Let's just go with the basics. Execute tight and we'll be able to move the football, like very old school West Coast football. And there's honor in that. You can make an offense doing that. It won't be an explosive one, and you're not going to, make 3-score comebacks doing that, but you can move the ball and you can give yourself a fighting chance with that kind of offense. And I think that's more what the Vikings did with him in Atlanta. And then in that Green Bay disaster game, they tried to go rollout mode on him, and it was a catastrophe. And these 7-step drop rollout things, when you're with the 4s, right? And you got 4th team offensive line out there, that's just like a disaster waiting to happen. And I don't really get why the Vikings still want that sort of footwork and that sort of structure to be his offense. I hate it. I think especially if you don't get JJ McCarthy in the Cleveland game, you're probably going to get not much Sam Darnold again. So you're probably going to get a lot of Mullins and a lot of Hall. And then we really get to talk about this as like a battle. And if Mullins throws 4 interceptions and Jaren Hall has a reasonable game, I think that conversation gets harder. For now, if you made the decision today, I think you're still very much cutting Jaren Hall, and I think you're just moving on with the 3 quarterbacks. Josh asks, when coaches are planning out a training camp practice, not joint practices, one team only, how much coordination is there between, say, O'Connell and Flores in what plays are going to be run? So what I would understand is that the coaches will maybe know, so that you can, they'll know what's coming because they'll want to choose plays. Oh, Flores wants to blitz a lot today. Okay, here's the plays I want to stress test against the blitz. Let's call these today. So I think that there will be that kind of discussion. I don't know if you get a full list on both sides, because you definitely don't want the players to know what's coming and stuff. And more level of detail than that, I would not know. But I would imagine that there's some strategizing there, but also just knowing, hey, we're going to be situational. And you know that you're going against Flores' situational playbook, and O'Connell will be familiar with that. And you'll have a little bit of synergy there. But I do think it's kept some kind of separate. But I would also imagine that each team would have a different sort of delineation, depending on what side of the ball the head coach is from and stuff like that. Yeti asks, what would you expect the Vikings draft to look like position-wise for 2025, assuming they get the comp 3 that is projected? So if they get that third, so they'll have a first and a third, and that'll be basic, and then you'll have like the day 3 stuff where positional value kind of goes out the window. You're just getting guys that make the team. Or you're hoping to get guys that make the team at any position. Probably corner. And I said corner again? Like probably corner? Like, is that correct? I feel like that's what has to happen. What they have built right now in terms of a cornerback room is short term, right? Byron Murphy, I think he's in the last year of a deal. Shaq Griffin, 1-year deal. Fabian Moreau, 1-year deal. Caleb Evans, 2 years left on his deal. Like, no long-term commitments at all in the whole room. So even if you like this group, you got to go extend them all. And like, there's still work to do. So they're again going to go into an offseason needing to make 5 or 6 cornerback transactions just to fill out the room for the 53, let alone the 90 man. So we're going to have another offseason where we're going, oh my God, where are the corners? We're probably going to see free agents and all kinds of stuff. Corner. Yeah, it's a huge problem. I wish I could stop talking about it. Oofdum asks, are you taller than Arif? No, Arif's like what? 6'2", 6'3"? No, I'm a respectable 5'11". Arif's taller. Sam Olson asks, what are some of your personal favorite YouTube channels and podcasts to watch or listen to gain more football knowledge? Good one. Okay, so in the Locked On world, of course, Locked On NFL, Draft Dudes is good. I kid you not, Locked On Eagles. Gino and Louie really know ball, and I love cutting it up with those guys. I've been able to talk to those guys on Locked On NFL the last couple weeks, so love talking to those guys, and it's just, there's a good ball knowledge pod. You might not care about the Eagles at all or want to hear about the Eagles at all, but it's just a good ball knowledge podcast. I think the same about Ross and Locked On Saints. Outside of the Locked On world, the Make Defense Great Again podcast with Coach Vass, that will explode your brain. And YouTube channel wise, depending on what level you're at, I think if you're like, I play Madden and I want to know more about how the real game works, I think Brett Coleman's great for that like particular level. If you have like experience coaching and you're looking for something more advanced, I think that like Brett's not playing to that audience as much. Then I think you're looking for like clinics. You're looking for, which you can find a bunch of clinics on YouTube. If you have like a Glacier Drive login, that's a big one. So then you're kind of looking for more stuff like that. But there's nothing better than calling your local high school football coach and asking questions. They would love it. In a lot of cases, they'd be like, yeah, what do you got? And they just, because they love teaching, they're coaches. I've learned a lot that way, not calling, emailing, but emailing coaches or just like asking questions of people that are in my area, that are people who are more than happy to just be like, okay, no, so this is how we run it. This is how it works. This is the system. And it's really like expanded my own base of knowledge too. I will see you all tomorrow. And as always, Skull.